Thank you for watching this video on Korea Housing Finance Corporation's mortgage-backed securities. We have created this video to provide useful information to our foreign investors interested in our MBS. This video will start with our CEO's greeting, followed by HF overview, MBS investment overview and its advantages, the issuance status of MBS and future plans. Let us begin with a welcome message from our CEO, Mr. Choi Jun-woo.
안녕하십니까. 한국주택금융공사 사장 최준우입니다. 세계 각국에서 한국주택금융공사 MBS에 관심을 가져주시는 여러분께 진심으로 감사드립니다. 공사는 2004년 유동화증권 발행 전문기관으로 설립되어 엄격한 심사 기준으로 취급된 주택담보대출을 기초자산으로 MBS를 발행하여 왔습니다. 그 결과 공사 MBS는 높은 안정성과 수익성을 투자자에게 인정받아 한국 채권 시장에서 국채, 통화안정증권에 이어 3대 채권으로 자리매김하고 있습니다. 또한 MBS 발행을 통하여 조달된 자금은 무주택 서민의 주택 마련을 위해 사용됩니다. 공사는 이러한 공익적 성격을 국제인증기관으로부터 인정받아 MBS를 사회적 채권으로 발행하고 있습니다. 2021년 8월 말 현재 공사 MBS는 한국 ESG 채권의 약 60%를 차지하며 ESG 채권 시장을 선도하고 있습니다. 2020년 공사는 최초로 MBS에 대한 외국인 투자 유치에 성공하였으며 올해 들어 외국인 투자액이 1조 원을 넘는 양적 성장을 이루었습니다. 이는 글로벌 시장에서 인정받은 공사 커버드 본드에 이어 MBS의 상품성을 인정해 주시고 선도적으로 투자해 주신 외국인 투자자분들이 계셨기에 가능한 일이라고 생각합니다. 이번 영상을 통하여 여러분들이 MBS에 대한 이해를 넓히는 계기가 되기 바라며 향후 투자를 고려하시는 분들도 성공적인 투자 사례로 이어지기를 희망합니다. 투자자 여러분, 영상으로 인사드릴 기회가 있어서 반가웠으며 향후 투자 설명회 등을 통하여 직접 만나 뵙기를 기대하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Now let us briefly introduce HF. HF was incorporated in March 2004 under the Korea Housing Finance Corporation Act to promote the long-term and stable supply of housing finance and contribute to the welfare of citizens and the development of the national economy. In terms of shareholding, HF is a wholly owned state enterprise owned by the Ministry of Economy and Finance, the Bank of Korea, and the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport. As of the end of 2020, HFS paid-in capital totaled approximately 2 trillion won. In terms of financial status, HF held 153.6 trillion won in assets and 3.8 trillion won in equity as of the end of 2020 and recorded 208 billion won in net income in 2020. HF has 4 major businesses. First, HF provides public mortgages. HF public mortgages are long-term, fixed-rate, and amortized loans. This allows non-homeowners to purchase new houses and pay back their mortgages on a stable basis. Second, HF issues mortgage-backed securities. HF issues MBS and covered bonds in the bond market in order to raise funds for public mortgage loans in a stable manner. Third, HF provides guarantees for housing finance. HF provides credit guarantees to individuals in need of jeonse loans or middle payment loans and to home builders looking for construction loans. Fourth, HF provides home pensions. Home pensions are a reverse mortgage loan provided for those aged 55 or over who wish to receive monthly pensions by collateralizing their homes. MBS are the primary funding source for public mortgages for HF. Let us explain MBS in more detail in the next video. Let us first explain how MBS are structured. HF buys mortgage loans offered by financial institutions and then transfers them to trusts. The trusts issue MBS by using the loans as underlying assets and sell them to investors. HF uses the proceeds from the issuance of MBS to pay for the mortgage loans, enabling homebuyers to take out public mortgages. When homebuyers repay the principal and interest of the mortgage, they are used to repay the principal and interest of MBS held in the trust account. There are 3 public mortgage loans that can be used as underlying assets for MBS. First, 디딤돌 loans provided to low-income non-homeowners. Second, 보금자리 loans provided to those who meet pre-underwriting requirements. Third, conforming loans where banks set the lending requirements independently under the underwriting standards. Thanks to the stable cash flow from the underlying assets and HF's guarantees for payment of MBS principal and interest, HF MBS have a AAA credit rating and are recognized as reliable investment options. HF MBS are issued in 2 types. One is General MBS and the other is Pass-Through MBS. Let us first talk about General MBS. General MBS have 9 tranches from 1 to 30 years, and those with maturity of 5 years or more are issued with call options. When the underlying asset for MBS is repaid early, the principal and interest of the MBS with call options are repaid, starting from those with a 5-year maturity. Once MBS with a 5-year maturity are fully repaid, those with a 7-year maturity come next. Dividends are paid to General MBS investors every 3 months from the issuance date. The amount of dividends is calculated as follows. A call option is exercisable on every dividend payment date and is paid in multiples of 1% of the issuance amount. To ensure the stability of MBS investments, a certain vesting period applies to MBS with a 7 to 30-year maturity. This illustrates the issuance example of General MBS. In terms of maturity, MBS with a maturity of 3 years or less account for 34%. Those with a maturity of 5 to 7 years account for 44%. And those with a maturity of 10 years or more account for 22%. Now, let us move on to Pass-Through MBS. Pass-Through MBS have 4 tranches ranging from 2 to 20 years. In Pass-Through MBS, the principal and interest of the underlying asset repaid by the borrowers are paid directly to the investors. If the principal and interest of the underlying asset are higher than the fee and dividend payable to investors, the principal of Pass-Through MBS is repaid from those with a 2-year maturity. Once MBS with a 2-year maturity are fully repaid, then those in the next tranches are repaid. The benefit of Pass-Through MBS is that investors can enjoy predictable cash flow as repayment between MBS and their underlying assets is matched. The first dividend for Pass-Through MBS is paid on the 25th day of the month, which is 3 months from the issuance date. After that, dividends are paid every 3 months. Now, let us explain how Pass-Through MBS are repaid before maturity. The principal of Pass-Through MBS is repaid on every dividend payment date in multiples of 1% of the issuance amount. Every 3 months, the repayment for the underlying asset less the dividend and fee is used to repay the MBS. This illustrates the issuance example of Pass-Through MBS. In terms of maturity, those with a maturity of 2 years account for 22%. Those with a maturity of 5 years account for 42%, and those with a 10 and 20-year maturities account for 36%. Let us summarize what has been explained thus far and compare General and Pass-Through MBS. In general, the scale of issuance is larger and the tranches are more diverse for General MBS than for Pass-Through MBS. Based on the progress of repayment of the underlying assets, HF may choose to exercise the MBS call option. However, please note that certain MBS have a vesting period depending on maturity. For pass-through MBS, when the underlying asset is repaid during a certain period of time, the repayment is used to fully repay the MBS starting from the shortest maturity. Let us move on to the MBS issuance process. First, HF establishes an annual plan for issuance of mortgage-backed securities. We determine the scale of the securities that need to be issued annually based on the target supply of public mortgages. We also organize pools of brokerage firms, accounting firms in charge of due diligence, credit rating agencies, and online bidding agencies to participate in the MBS issuance process. Once an annual plan is established, HF issues MBS for every round of issuance in the following order. HF establishes a monthly issuance plan and posts the plan for investors. Such monthly plans are determined flexibly based on the scale of public mortgages purchased by HF, as well as bond market circumstances, and are posted on the K-MBS website. On the K-MBS website, investors can access not only monthly MBS issuance plans, but other investment-related information such as bidding notices and repayment details. HF arranges joint lead managers to participate in the upcoming round of issuance 3 business days prior to the issuance date and determines the ceiling spread. HF receives proposals on the spread for firm commitment from the brokerage firms in its pool and selects a group of firms to participate in the upcoming round of issuance through competitive bidding. The maximum spread proposed by the selected firms for each tranche is set as a ceiling spread, and notification of such is provided to investors. Bidding for MBS takes place 2 days prior to the issuance date. Bidding notices are posted on the K-MBS and HF websites the day before the bidding date. Bidding is carried out in a Dutch auction process, where the highest spread of the accepted bids applies to all bidders. The coupon rate and bidding rate are as follows. This is the bidding timetable for each tranche. Lead managers pay the contract amount on the issuance date, and the MBS sold are electronically registered at the Korea Securities Depository. After 4 days from the issuance date, MBS are publicly listed on the Korea Exchange. We will now move on to the advantages of MBS investment. First, MBS investors can achieve high profitability. In general, HF MBS produce higher yields compared to special laws bond with the same maturity. Second, MBS investments are stable. Under the Korea Housing Finance Corporation Act, MBS are structured to ensure that cash flows from underlying assets are sufficient to repay MBS. In addition, investors are assured by HF's payment guarantees for MBS even if losses are incurred on the trusts. The Korea Housing Finance Corporation Act requires that HF provide guarantees for repayment of the principal and interest of MBS in full, and the government compensate for losses incurred by HF. Third, MBS are backed by high-quality underlying assets. Strict underwriting standards apply as follows to HF public mortgages, ensuring the underlying asset quality of MBS remains highly reliable. Fourth, MBS are as attractive as most Treasury bonds. HF MBS are eligible collateral for open market transactions and can be used as collateral for guaranteeing net settlements or the Bank of Korea's loans to financial institutions, along with Treasury bonds and monetary stabilization bonds. Under Basel III, MBS are recognized as high-quality liquid assets with a zero-risk weight. This means investments in MBS can improve both the BIS ratio and the financial conditions of an entity. Also, HF MBS can serve as eligible collateral for over-the-counter derivatives just as Treasury bonds do. Finally, MBS contribute to creating social value. As the proceeds raised from the issuance of MBS are used to provide housing for middle to low-class non-home owners, HF MBS have been issued as social bonds since March 2019. HF MBS now account for 60% of the ESG bonds and 80% of social bonds issued in South Korea, and have emerged as a leader in the ESG bond market. With a rising interest in ESG bonds in recent years, investors are increasingly paying attention to HF-MBS. HF discloses how the proceeds from the issuance of MBS are used and how they create social value for every round of issuance. Investors can access such information on the K-MBS website. Next, let us explain recent issuance status and future plans. Up until September 2021, HF has issued 343 trillion won of MBS, with a balance amounting to 150 trillion won. MBS ranked third in terms of the balance of securities issued, following Treasury bonds and monetary stabilization bonds. Additional issuance information and monthly issuance plans can be found on the K-MBS website. Over the course of this video, we have gone over the characteristics and advantages of HF-MBS. Many foreign investors have recognized that HF-MBS are as stable as Treasury bonds and offer an even higher yield than Treasury bonds. As such, foreign investment in MBS has grown continuously. We would like to encourage our viewers to consider investing in HF-MBS in the near future. If you have any inquiries, please contact us via the following contact point so that we can provide you with more detailed information. This concludes our video on HF-MBS. Thank you for watching.